I'm gonna make a prediction for you. If he wins in November, you ain't seen nothing yet. It's gonna be really bad. How do I know that? Because he did the same thing in San Francisco not that long ago. And anybody who's been there recently knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's terrible. It's a beautiful city, and look at it. A wreck. George Gascon created that. Leadership. Leaders don't get sued by 30 different people. Women, working moms, African Americans, Latinx, people who are Jewish. They don't. Leaders don't lose their personnel and talk down to them and ignore them. As Maria said, we've lost 25% of our workforce in 3 years. That is not a coincidence. It's difficult to do our job. Character. Leaders don't put their hand up to a college student of color when she's questioning him and he can't answer the questions, and tells her basically with his hand, talk to the hand because the face ain't having it. Leaders don't do that. Leaders don't tell people, a grieved mother who's lost her son in a murder, and the DA's policies reverse that, what's going to happen to that perpetrator. They don't tell that mother, in a microphone I'm using right now, that you are ignorant and misinformed. The good news is Nathan Hochman is the exact opposite of that. I've gotten to know Nathan over the last 5 months or so. I didn't know this man at all. I'm from LA, so I don't listen to what you say. I look at what you do.
Yeah.
And your actions. Nathan is that person. He walks the walk, talks the talk, and does things. It gets things done.
Yeah.
He's done that his entire life. So, I'm telling you now, in front of everybody, I fully support this man in his endeavor to be the DA, and I'm all in. And I hope you are too. This man is smart. He is genuine. He is honest. He will look you in the eye, as I said, and answer every question. But you know what? He could do it a lot better than me, so I'm going to have him come up and speak to you. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Nathan Hochman.
Wow. I'm telling you, I almost feel like I want to put on the boxing gloves and just get in the ring right now with Gascon. Thank you so much for a fantastic introduction. Jimmy, I know you're out there somewhere. Thank you so much for making this happen. Ron, really appreciate the words. And all the co-hosts here, again, thank you so much for what's going on. And thank you, my brother, for telling me to put the microphone close to my mouth. So what I want to do tonight is I want to tell you why I'm running for this office, which also dovetails with my background. I want to discuss a bit about our current district attorney, George Gascon, and how he has completely taken us to the abyss of public safety, and he's getting ready to push us in. Then I want to show you and tell you what I'm going to do on day one to change what George Gascon has done, and with your help to restore safety in this community. And then I also want to answer the question how I'm going to beat Gascon. Because it is really a nice thing if you build a beautiful electoral tree in the forest, but if that tree falls down and nobody hears it, you haven't accomplished a thing. I'm here to tell you that with your help, on November 5th, my electoral tree will fall on the head of George Gascon, and we will finally be able to say, and it's taken us 4 years to get there, that Gascon is gone. So, let me start out by telling you about my background and why I want to be DA. I'm a lifelong Angelino. I was born here, I grew up here, I'm married now 31 years, I raised my 3 kids who are now in their 20s here in Los Angeles. And I'm not going to let some guy come in from San Francisco, destroy the public safety there, come to Los Angeles, destroy the public safety here, and get me, my family, my friends, my community, any of you, to leave Los Angeles. Because that has been one of the reactions to George Gascon. Everyone knows the people who have left. And it wasn't the high taxes, it wasn't the traffic or the smog, it was fear. Fear for themselves, fear for their family, fear not just at night, but during the day as well. Fear that if you go to a nice downtown area, you go to a restaurant, should you wear the watch? Because maybe today you're going to be that statistic. When you go back to your car, you look around, see if your car was broken into, because maybe today you're that statistic. And when you drive home, you kind of go up to your front door, your garage, kind of carefully, because you're worried about being that statistic that day. That fear is permeating what's going on. And I got to tell you, I have had a chance to go up and down this entire county, talking to everyone from store owners from East Los Angeles to police associations down here in Long Beach. I've been up to Lancaster. I've been to the Greater Zion Church in Compton. I've been out to Rosemead in Arcadia to speak to the Chinese American community, Koreatown to speak to the Korean American community, Glendale, Burbank to speak to the Armenian American community. And I'm telling you that fear that I talk about is not stuff that I talk about to them. It's the stories that they give back to me over and over and over again. I'm hearing it. It really, you get to the end of the day, you want to come to Jimmy E's and have a drink.
Yeah.
I mean, these stories are incredible. I met with my brother and I met with 100 owners of 7-Eleven franchisees. They're 7-Eleven franchisees owners. And they told us, they literally keep showing me WhatsApp, stories and videos on their WhatsApp of people coming into their stores, grabbing 2 six-packs, walking out, and waving goodbye. Because they know that nothing is going to happen to them. And even if these store owners, and they used to call the police show up and they say, look, the DA's office has a policy of not going after juveniles who steal under $950, so we're so sorry we can't help you. When I asked these store owners, I said, well, what about your insurance? Don't you want to file an insurance claim? They said, no. The deductible on our policy now will eat up whatever we lost, and if we file the insurance claim, we'll lose our insurance. I mean, talk about a no-win situation. In fact, one of the 7-Eleven owners gave me this example. They said the other day, guy comes in, grabs $10 worth of beer, starts to walk out. The store owner says, well, that's $10. The guy flips him a $5. And he says, no, it's $10, not $5. He says, you should feel lucky. I'm giving you $5.
Jeez.
That is what George Gascón has created in our county. And quite candidly, I believe in the idea that small crimes lead to larger crimes. They call it the broken windows theory. It's a theory that actually was grounded in reality in New York, 1970s. Turns out that in New York, people don't understand New York because they see it today. But I was there in the 1970s watching New York. It was on the verge of bankruptcy. The graffiti and the violence and the broken windows in the subways and the stores around it were such that you had a spiral of lawlessness that was out of control. And the way they decided to attack it was to go after those small crimes. And that is one of the things we will be doing on day one. We will make it clear that we will start or resume holding people accountable for their actions. So if you want to go ahead and steal that property from a 7-Eleven, you will be held accountable for your actions. But let me explain what I mean by that. When I say accountable, I'm not going to go from the extreme policies of Gascón's decarceration, which basically says there are certain crimes and certain criminals we're not prosecuting no matter what the facts and the law are, to the policies of mass incarceration. Those extreme policies didn't work either. Where I come down is where prosecutors have come down for literally decades, and I call it the middle. I call it actually the hard middle, because it requires work. You can't have the lazy blanket policies that Gascón has instituted. You actually have to look at each defendant individually, look at their background, look at the crime committed, look at the impact on the victim, to determine who the true threats are to our public safety and need to be behind bars, and quite honestly, the ones that aren't. The first-time nonviolent offender, if they violated society's laws, They have a debt to pay back to society. But it might not be that particular debt has to be in prison. That might be a situation where we use community service. You know what? Pick up trash on the side of the road if you want to violate society's laws. Restitution, if you steal something from somebody, pay it back. Or if they have a serious mental illness or a drug addiction, a diversion program, which if they complete a lengthy and rigorous diversion program and get their illness under check, we're going to wipe their record clean. Those are the non-prison alternatives, but it's based on accountability. Because while Gascon will literally hide his eyes and pretend certain crimes are not occurring, I won't. Neither will the 750 prosecutors who I will hopefully have the chance to lead. They're not going to close their eyes anymore either. Because the policies that have handcuffed the prosecutors instead of handcuffing the criminals will be removed. Now, in an election for DA, one would expect the DA to run on two things. First, he would run on his experience. And he would say, I, George Gascon, have far more experience than my opponent, therefore vote for me. The problem with Gascon saying that is he's never personally prosecuted or defended a criminal case in his entire life. Quite a shocking fact for people who hear that for the first time, because he's been the DA of San Francisco, the DA of LA, and he's never actually done the work. Imagine being in charge of a group of surgeons, but you've never done surgery, and you're telling the surgeons what to do. That's incredible. That's George Gascon. So you're not going to hear him run on his 0 years of experience, especially when he's going to have to compare that to myself with 34 years of experience. I spent 10 years as a federal prosecutor after graduating Brown University, Stanford Law School, and clerking for a federal judge. I had the chance to prosecute narcotics offenders, gang members, money launderers. I ran the environmental crime section and went after air, sea, and land polluters. I then had the chance to be in the public corruption section and go after corrupt public officials and dirty cops. 10 years after that. Thank you. Imagine that. It's so sad that we have to applaud for a DA candidate that actually has experience. I mean, but there we are. And 10 years after that, I had the opportunity to be nominated by a president of the United States, received a unanimous U.S. confirmation to run the U.S. Department of Justice's tax division in Washington, D.C. That is a fantastic job. In fact, my wife, if she was here, she gets the huge credit because she stayed in LA with the 3 young kids, and she said I got to go to Washington, D.C. to go to fantasy job camp. And it was fantastic. You know, you got to have a $100 million budget, 350 lawyers doing cases all over the nation. Fantastic job. Came back to LA, though, and filled out sort of my resume because I'd done the prosecution, but now I've also done 24 years as a defense attorney. And I'm telling you, I've had all the different types of cases out there. And those cases help prepare me for being a district attorney. Because I think it's very important to be a DA. In fact, I'll be the first DA with defense experience to be able to say that, look, I understand the importance of due process. Every day I fight in court for clients to make sure they get due process under the system. That those prosecutors who want to put them in jail are doing it with evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. And I will take that 360 perspective into the office of DA to not only make sure that every single prosecutor is building a case beyond a reasonable doubt, but that they understand what the mission is. And by the way, I don't have to tell them what the mission is. They have been steeped in that mission for the years they have been in that office, because that mission is actually justice. And it is an unusual role, if you think about it, for a lawyer in our society. So I'll tell you, when I'm on the defense side, my mission is to help my client. That's my only mission. It's not necessarily justice, it's helping my client. That's the system. But when you're a prosecutor, you actually have justice as your client. How amazing. I mean, in other words, if you're in a case and you built that case to the hilt, and the evidence you think is so strong, But all of a sudden, somewhere in the middle of the case, something goes wrong. A witness doesn't show up, the evidence doesn't show up. You have the power and the obligation to do the right thing at every point in the process. That is the lesson that I learned when I was on my first day as a prosecutor. That is the lesson that these deputy district attorneys take into court every single day. They're the DAs. That is not the lesson that George Gascón understands. So we can bring that back on day one as well. Because here's what I'm going to commit to all of you today, that I am going to focus on the three stakeholders in the criminal justice system, because George Gascón has either abandoned or alienated each one of them. The first stakeholder are those prosecutors, the 750 deputy district attorneys that George Gascón showed up on day one and told those people that he, with zero experience, knows more than they do with collectively thousands of years of experience. And he issued 9 special directives in an email that changed the course of criminal justice for the worse. I'm here to tell you that I was fortunate enough to get the endorsement of the union that represents those 750 attorneys. And I told the president of the union, look, I want to meet with as many of those deputy district attorneys as possible. And I am so lucky to have met with over 300 of them. Many of them say, by the way, that the hour and a half that they spend with me is more time than they spent with George Gascón in 3.5 years. And he is such a fool. And I'll use that word. Sorry. I'll use that word. Apparently George doesn't like that word, but I'm going to use it anyway. He's a fool. Because he has this ability, when he was coming in from the outside without any experience, to say to everyone there, look, what is working and what's not working? You're in the front lines. How do you think we should fix it? That is the exact sensibility I will bring to the job. And I've told the deputy district attorneys exactly that. And when I'm looking at what the greatest asset is of a DA's office, I don't look at the courtrooms, the cases, the computers. I look at the deputy district attorneys. I look at the Bureau of Investigation investigators. I look at the support staff. And I say that is the asset. Now, and anybody who's ever led an organization then has to ask the next question. How do you maximize the asset of your business? That's the DA's role. My job is to make sure those deputies have the training they need, have the resources they need, and when they do a fantastic job, that I don't do what George Gascón does and stand up at a press conference and say, I investigated the case, I convicted these people, I sentenced these people, give me, George Gascón, all the laudits and success. How dare he take credit for work he didn't do? I will have those prosecutors up there with me, getting the success that they deserve. And I told them, unless they are camera shy, and I've yet to meet a prosecutor who is camera shy, they will be up there with me. And the logic is actually very simple. I'm going to require these people to work harder than they've ever worked in their whole lives. The DA's office has a hole that we're going to have to dig ourselves out of. So I need not only their A game, not only their 100% game, I need that 110% every single day. And when they give it to me, because it's not enough, I absolutely have met these people, they were ready to unleash their best game, then they're going to get the success. They'll be up there with me, and their friends will then see, wow, he was serious. They're up there. I want to be up there. They're going to give me their best. And then we're going to go ahead, and Maria is right. We have problems. We're 25% down on staffing and deputies, so we need to recruit up. And where are they going today? They're not coming in LA. Nobody wants to work for Gascón. They're going to Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino. In fact, good old Todd Spitzer, who I actually like very much, he's endorsed me. He had the chutzpah to go ahead and put a billboard on the 405 South, right around here, in the 710 South, saying to criminals, beware, the Orange County District Attorney's Office will actually put you in jail. Now, I saw Todd last week, and I brought this up with him. And I said, Todd, I hope you didn't take a long-term lease on those billboards, because come November 5th, we're going to need to take them down. And Todd looked at me and he said, gladly. He can't wait to have a partner in the DA's office because he understands that LA crime very often ends up in Orange County. In fact, you probably read about the story about those two tourists from New Zealand, Patricia and Doug McKay, who basically just wanted to have a nice day at Fashion Island and do some shopping. But what they didn't know when they got out, getting ready to go home that day, is that there were three guys watching them in a car. Because Doug McKay had an expensive watch on. And sure enough, the two of those guys get out of the car and they grab his hand to get his watch. A struggle ensues. Unfortunately, Patricia McKay ends up in front of the car, and the driver of the car drags her 65 feet to her death. Now, the reason this is relevant for our discussion tonight is the driver of that car. His name was Leroy McCrary. Leroy McCrary should never have been in that car that day. Why? Because about a year before, Leroy McCrary was on the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica. He took a gun to a guy's head to steal his Rolex and succeeded. But he left his DNA on the victim. He was wearing a distinctive sweatshirt that was in the video. They had the goods on Leroy McCrary. But luckily, if you're Leroy McCrary and his lawyer, they had George Gascón as the DA. And that case gets pled down from an armed robbery to a simple robbery. Yeah. And even though Leroy McCrary had 2 strikes and would have had a 3rd strike, so he would have been in prison for, 8 to 15 years, by having it pled down under George Gascón's policies, sure enough, Leroy McCrary got probation and a suspended sentence so that he could be driving that car a year later and dragging Patricia McKay to her death. That is why when I talk about special directives, when I talk about statistics of violent crime, hate crimes, property crimes going through the roof, it really comes home when you convert those statistics into real life stories. I mean, I can talk about kids ripping off 7-Elevens, but when you meet the 7-Eleven owners and they tell you these horror stories about their life savings being in that 7-Eleven, and they've worked basically 6.5 days out of every 7 days to build up that store, and now they can't even sell it to get their money out because things have gone so poorly. When I talk to again, whether it's a store owners, I was just in East Los Angeles, and we talked to the whole block of basically Whittier Boulevard. Then I went over to Crenshaw Boulevard, in parts of Compton and Hawthorne. And I'm hearing the same stories over and over and over again. It really makes you incredibly sad, but I must tell you what it also does for me. It gives me a kick in the pants, and it says work a little harder to beat Gascón. Because this is a winnable race. Gascón on election night, primary election night, only got 25% of the vote. I mean, that's a historic low. Nobody's ever gotten so few votes who's run for re-election as a DA. So I look at this race, and I look at this room, and I say to myself, tomorrow morning I'm going to get up another hour earlier, and I'm going to work even harder till tomorrow night, and I'm going to do this every single day until November 5th. Because the way I will beat Gascón, let me end with that and then take your questions, is as follows. On election night, when Gascón gets 25% of the vote, 75% of the people rejected George Gascón. I had the opportunity to run against Maria Ramirez. I always say it too quickly. Maria Ramirez. And by the way, such an honor to run against such a quality person. She ran such a great race. And again, if Maria was making this speech right now, I would be telling you, vote for Maria. I mean, she is a incredible quality person. But Maria tells me, she said she is very honest with me. She has explained the problems in the office. She's also explained, which is the best part, the solutions. And she knows that those solutions will not be achieved if George Gascón is the DA. But I have told Maria, I said, come November 5th, we are going to unleash your solutions and yourself and the entire energy of the deputy district attorneys. We are going to unleash the frustration and release the frustration for the tens of thousands of law enforcement officers who feel incredibly demoralized. We will go back to being the champion of victims. George Gascón has abandoned those victims. And the way I now will harness that 75% is with your help. I mean, there's two different ways people can help out. Obviously, we have actually hit records in fundraising. The prior record through June 30th was $625,000. We raised $1.6 million. And we've raised it. And what it signifies to me is where the money came from. It was half Republican, half Democrat, and the other half, it's actually half Republican, half Democrat and independent. It came from every sector of this county. It was contributions as small as $5 up to the maximum $1,500. And again, it was from over 3,000 people in this county since March 5th. And what those people are basically telling me is that, look, this election is not about politics. It is about who is going to keep people safe and their families safe, who has the experience to do that, who has a blueprint for justice that can actually carry it out. And George Gascón has been given 3.5 years to run his social experiment, and he has failed. And they get to know me even a little bit, and they said Nathan Hochman can get the job done. So what I'm going to ask from you folks is this, and Ron has touched on this, others have touched on it, and I'll touch on it as well. There are probably, I'm guessing, about 100 people here tonight. But I don't see 100 people. I see 100,000 people here tonight. And we're going to tell Jimmy E, I'm sorry, there's a lot of alcohol, there's a lot of food, there's 100,000 people here tonight. Sorry, Jimmy. But it really is. Because if you go to your social media, your texts, your emails, if in the next 80 plus days you take this message as my ambassador, literally an ambassador for this message to all your friends, and then tell them to go to their friends, and you tell them two things. First, the DA's race matters. You've heard that other people say this, but we've got a president race, we've got a senator race, but we also have a race that will have more impact on your and your family's safety than any other race, and it's the DA's race. And if you're here, you get that message. But I'm here to tell you, a lot of people do not connect the failure of safety in their community with the position of DA. I need you folks to get that message out there. And now you have spent the time to actually learn something about the DA's race and meet a candidate. Now you have the opportunity to say to them confidently, George Gascón needs to go, and you need to vote for Nathan Hochman.